Hello, and welcome to the Chronicles of Prydain. It's by author Lloyd Alexander, and there are 5 books in the Prydain series, and then a collection of tales of sorts about the land of Prydain. But before each book is an author's note. So I would like to start this off with the author's note for the first book, called the Book of Three. This chronicle of the land of Prydain is not a retelling or retranslation of Welsh mythology. Prydain is not Wales, not entirely at least. The inspiration for it comes from that magnificent land and its legends, but essentially, Prydain is a country existing only in the imagination. Few of its inhabitants are drawn from the ancient tales. Gwydion, for example, is a real legendary figure. Iran, the Dread Lord of Annwfyn, comes from the Mabinogion, classic collection of Welsh legends, although in Prydain he is considerably more villainous. There is an authentic mythological basis for Iran's cauldron. Hinwen, the oracular pig, the old enchanter Dalbin, and others. However, Taran, the assistant pigkeeper, like Eilenwy of the red gold hair, was born in my own Prydain. The geography of Prydain is peculiar to itself. Any resemblance between it and Wales is perhaps not coincidental, but not to be used as a guide for tourists. It is a small land, yet it has enough room for gallantry and humor, and even an assistant pigkeeper there may cherish certain dreams. The Chronicle of Prydain is a fantasy. Such things never happen in real life. Or do they? Most of us are called on to perform tasks far beyond what we believe we can do. Our capabilities seldom match our aspirations, and we are often woefully unprepared. To this extent, we are all assistant pigkeepers at heart. L.A. Lloyd Alexander. And there is a map here, which I will be displaying on screen right about now. And that will give you a good example of what we are looking at as we are going through this book. There is a special map for each book that is relevant to the book. And this is the one for the Book of Three, the first book. Now let's start Chapter 1. The Assistant Pigkeeper. Taran wanted to make a sword, but Coll, charged with the practical side of his education, decided on horseshoes, and so it had been horseshoes all morning long. Taran's arms ached, soot blackened his face. At last he dropped the hammer and turned to Coll, who was watching him critically. "Why?" Taran cried. "Why must it be horseshoes? As if we had any horses." Coll was stout and round, and his great bald head glowed bright pink. "Lucky for the horses," was all he said, glancing at Taran's handiwork. "I could do better with making a sword," Taran protested. "I know I could." And before Coll could answer, he snatched up the tongs, flung a strip of red-hot iron to the anvil, began hammering away as fast as he could. "Wait, wait!" cried Coll. "That's not the way to go after it." Heedless of Coll, unable even to hear him above the din, Taran pounded harder than ever. Sparks sprayed the air, but the more he pounded, the more the metal twisted and buckled, until finally the iron sprang from the tongs and fell to the ground. Taran stared in dismay. With the tongs, he picked up the bent iron and examined it. "Not quite the blade for a hero," Coll remarked. "It's ruined," Taran glumly agreed. "Looks like a sick snake," he added ruefully. "As I tried to tell you," said Coll, "you had it all wrong. You must hold the tongs so. When you strike, the strength must flow from your shoulder and your wrist be loose. You can hear it when you do it right. There's a kind of music to it. Besides," he added, "this is not the metal for weapons." Coll returned the crooked, half-worn blade to the furnace, where it lost its shape entirely. "Wish I might have my own sword," Taran sighed. "And you would teach me sword fighting." "Wished!" cried Coll. "Why should you want to know that? We have no battles at Caer Dallben." "We have no horses either," objected Taran, "but we're making horseshoes." "Get on with you," said Coll, unmoved. "That is for practice." "And so would this be," Taran urged. "Come on, teach me the sword fighting. You must know the art." Coll's shining head glowed even brighter. A trace of a smile appeared on his face, as though he were savoring something pleasant. True, he said quietly. I have held a sword once or twice in my day. Teach me now, pleaded Tarn. He seized a poker and brandished it, slashing at the air and dancing back and forth over the hard-packed earthen floor. See, he called, I know most of it already. Hold your hand, chuckled Call. If you were to come against me like that with all your posing and bouncing, I should have chopped you into bits by this time. He hesitated a moment. Look, you, he said quietly. At least you should know there's a right way and a wrong way to go about it. He picked up another poker. Here now, he ordered, with a sooty wink. Stand like a man. Tarn brought up his poker. While Cole shouted instructions, they set to parrying and thrusting, with much banging, clanging, and commotion. For a moment, Tarn was sure he had the better of Cole, but the old man spun away with an amazing lightness of foot. Now it was Tarn who strove desperately to ward off Cole's blows. Abruptly, Cole stopped. So did Tarn, his poker poised in midair. In the doorway of the forge stood the tall, bent figure of Dalbin. Dalbin, master of Caer Dalbin, was 379 years old. His beard covered so much of his face that he seemed always to be peering over a grey cloud. On the little farm, while Tarn and Cole saw to the ploughing, sowing, weeding, reaping, and all of the other tasks of husbandry, Dalbin undertook the meditating, an occupation so exhausting he could accomplish it only by lying down and closing his eyes. He meditated an hour and a half following breakfast and again later in the day. Clatter from the forge had roused him from his morning meditation. His robe hung askew over his bony knees. Stop the nonsense directly, said Dalbin. I'm surprised at you, he added, frowning at Call. There is serious work to be done. It wasn't Call, Tarn interrupted. It was I who asked to learn swordplay. Did not say I was surprised at you, remarked Dalbin, but perhaps I am, after all. I think you had best come with me. Tarn followed the ancient man out of the forge, across the chicken run, and into the white-thatched cottage. There, in Dalbin's chamber, mouldering tomes overflowed the sagging shelves, and spilled onto the floor, amid heaps of iron-cook pots, studded belts, harps with or without strings, and other oddments. Tarn took his place on the wooden bench, as he always did when Dalbin was in a mood for giving lessons or reprimands. I fully understand, said Dalbin, settling himself behind the table. In the use of weapons, as in everything else, there is a certain skill. But wiser heads than yours will determine when you should learn it. I'm sorry, Tarn began. I should not have. I'm not angry, Dalbin said, raising a hand. Only a little sad. Time flies quickly. Things always happen sooner than one expects. And yet, he murmured almost to himself, it troubles me. I fear the Horned King may have some part in this. The Horned King? Asked Tarn. We shall speak of him later, said Dalbin. He drew a ponderous leather-bound volume toward him, the Book of Three, from which he occasionally read to Tarn, and which, the boy believed, held in its pages everything anyone could possibly want to know. As I have explained to you before, Dalbin went on, and you have very likely forgotten, Prydain is a land of many cantrevs, of small kingdoms and many kings, and of course their war leaders who command the warriors. But there is a high king above them all, said Tarn. Math, son of Mathenwy. His war leader was the mightiest hero in Prydain. You told me of him. Prince Gwydion, yes. Tarn went on eagerly. I know. There are things you do not know, Dalbin said. For obvious reasons I have not told you. The moment I am less concerned with the realms of living than with the land of the dead. And with Anuvin. Tarn shuddered at the word. Even Dalbin had spoken it in a whisper. And with the King Oran, Lord of Anuvin, Dalbin said. Know this, he continued quickly. Anuvin is more than a land of death. It is a treasure house, not only of gold and jewels, but of all things of advantage to men. Long ago, the race of men owned these treasures. By craft and deceit, Oran stole them, one by one, for his own evil uses. Some few of the treasures have been wrested from him, though most lie hidden deep in Anuvin, where Oran guards them jealously. But Oran did not become ruler of Prydain, Tarn said. You may be thankful he did not, said Talbin. He would have ruled it had it not been for the children of Dawn, the sons of the Lady Dawn, and their consort, Belin, king of the sun. Long ago they voyaged to Prydain from the summer country, and found the land rich and fair, though the race of men had little for themselves. The son of Dawn built their stronghold at Caerdathel, far north in the Eagle Mountains. From there they helped regain at least a portion of what Iran had stolen, and stood as guardians against the lurking threat of Anubin. I hate to think what would have happened if the Sons of Dawn hadn't come, Taran said. It was good destiny that brought them. I'm not always sure, said Dalbin with a wry smile. The men of Prydain came to rely on the strength of the House of Dawn as a child clings to its mother. They do so even today. Math the High King is descended from the House of Dawn, so is Prince Gwydion, but that is all by the way. Prydain has been at peace, as much as men can be peaceful, until now. What you do not know, Dalbin said, is this. It has reached my ears that a new and mighty warlord has risen, as powerful as Gwydion, some say more powerful. He is a man of evil for whom death is a black joy. He sports with death as you might sport with a dog. Who is he? Cried Taran. Dalbin shook his head. No man knows his name, nor has any man seen his face. He wears an antlered mask, and for this reason he is called the Horned King. His purposes I do not know. I suspect the hand of Iran, but in what manner I cannot tell. I tell you now for your own protection, Dalbin added. From what I saw this morning, your head is full of nonsense about feats of arms. Whatever notions you may have, I advise you to forget them immediately. There's unknown danger abroad. You are barely on the threshold of manhood, and I have a certain responsibility to see that you reach it, preferably with a whole skin. So you are not to leave Caer-Dalbin under any circumstances, not even past the orchard, and certainly not into the forest. Not for the time being. For the time being? Taran burst out. I think it will always be for the time being. It will be vegetables and horseshoes all my life. Tut, said Dalbin. There are worse things. Do you set yourself to be a glorious hero? Do you believe it is all flashing swords and galloping about on horses? As for being glorious, what of Prince Gwydion? Cried Taran. Yes, I wish I might be like him. I fear, Dalbin said, that is entirely out of the question. But why? Taran sprang to his feet. I know if I had the chance. Why? Dalbin interrupted. In some cases, he said, we learn more by looking for the answer to a question and not finding it than we do from learning the answer itself. This is one of those cases. I could tell you why, but at the moment it would only be more confusing. If you grow up with any kind of sense, which you sometimes make me doubt, you will be very likely to reach your own conclusions. They'll probably be wrong, he added. However, since they'll be yours, you'll feel a little more satisfied with them. Taran sank back and sat, gloomy and silent, on the bench. Dalbin had already begun meditating again, his chin gradually coming to rest on his collarbone. His beard floated round his ears like a fog bank, and he began snoring peacefully. The spring scent of apple blossom drifted through the open window. Beyond Dalbin's chamber, Taran glimpsed the pale green fringe of forest, the fields, ready to cultivate, would soon turn golden with summer. The Book of Three lay closed on the table. Taran had never been allowed to read the volume for himself. Now he was sure it held more than Dalbin chose to tell him. In the sun-filled room, with Dalbin still meditating and showing no sign of stopping, Taran rose and moved through the shimmering beams. From the forest came the monotonous tick of a beetle. His hands reached for the cover. Taran gasped in pain and snatched them away. They smarted as each of his fingers had been stung by hornets. He jumped back, stumbled against the bench, and dropped to the floor, where he put his fingers woefully into his mouth. Dalbin's eyes blinked open. He peered at Taran and yawned slowly. You had better see Cull about lotion for those hands, he advised. Otherwise, I shouldn't be surprised if they blistered. Fingers smarting, the shamefaced Taran hurried from the cottage and found Cull near the vegetable garden. You have been at the Book of Three, Call said. That's not hard to guess. Now you know better. Well, that is one of the three foundations of learning. See much, study much, suffer much. He led Tarn to the stable where medicines for the livestock were kept, and poured a concoction over Tarn's fingers. What is the use of studying much when I am to see nothing at all? Tarn retorted. I think there is a destiny laid on me that I am not to know anything interesting, go anywhere interesting, or do anything interesting. Certainly not to be anything. Not even anything at Caer Dallben. Very well, said Coll. If that is all that troubles you, I shall make you something. From this moment on, you are Taran, assistant pig-keeper. You shall help me take care of Henwen. See her trough is full, carry her water, and give her a good scrubbing every other day. That is what I do now, Taran said bitterly. All the better, said Coll, for it makes things that much easier. If you want to be something with a name attached to it, I can't think of anything closer to hand. There's not every lad who can be assistant pig-keeper to an oracular pig. Indeed, she is the only oracular pig in Prydain, and the most valuable. Valuable to Dallben, Taran said. She never tells me anything. Do you think she would? Replied Coll. With Henwen, you must know how to ask. Here, what was that? Coll shaded his eyes with his hand. A black, buzzing cloud streaked from the orchard and bore on so rapidly and passed so close to Coll's head that he had to leap out of the way. The bees! Taran shouted. They're swarming. It's not their time, cried Coll. There's something amiss. The cloud rose high toward the sun. An instant later, Taran heard a loud clucking and squawking from the chicken run. He turned to see the 5 hens and the rooster beating their wings. Before it occurred to him that they were attempting to fly, they too were aloft. Taran and Coll raced to the chicken run, too late to catch the fowls. With the rooster leading, the chickens flapped awkwardly through the air and disappeared over the brow of a hill. From the stable, a pair of oxen bellowed and rolled their eyes in terror. Dallben's head poked out of the window. He looked irritated. It has become absolutely impossible for any kind of meditation whatsoever, he said with a severe glance at Taran. I've warned you once. Something frightened the animals, Taran protested. First the bees, then the chickens flew off. Dallben's face turned grave. I have been given no knowledge of this, he said to Coll. We must ask Henwen about it immediately. We shall need the litter sticks. Quickly, help me find them. Coll moved hastily to the cottage door. Watch Henwen closely, he ordered Taran. Do not let her out of your sight. Coll disappeared inside the cottage to search for Henwen's letter sticks, the long rods of ashwood carved with spells. Taran was both frightened and excited. Dallben, he knew, would consult Henwen only on a matter of greatest urgency. Within Taran's memory, it had never happened before. He hurried to the pen. Henwen usually slept until noon. Then, trotting daintily, despite her size, she would move to a shady corner of her enclosure and settle comfortably for the rest of the day. The white pig was continually grunting and chuckling to herself. Whenever she saw Taran, she would raise her wide, cheeky face so that he could scratch under her chin. But this time she paid no attention to him. Wheezing and whistling, Henwen was digging furiously in the soft earth at the far side of the pen, burrowing so rapidly she would soon be out. Taran shouted to her, but the clods continued flying at a great rate. He swung himself over the fence. The oracular pig stopped and glanced around. As Taran approached the hole, already sizable, Henwen hurried to the opposite side of the pen and started a new excavation. Taran was strong and long-legged, but to his dismay, he saw that Henwen moved faster than he. As soon as he chased her from the second hole, she turned quickly on her short legs and made for the first. Both, by now, were big enough for her head and shoulders. Taran frantically began scraping earth back into the burrow. Henwen dug faster than a badger, and her hind legs planted firmly, her front legs plowing ahead. Taran despaired of stopping her. He scrambled back over the rails and jumped to the spot where Henwen was about to emerge, planning to seize her and hang on until Dallben and Coll arrived. He underestimated Henwen's speed and strength. An explosion of dirt and pebbles, the pig burst from out under the fence, heaving Taran into the air. He landed with the wind knocked out of him. Henwen raced across the field and into the woods. Taran followed. Ahead, the forest rose up dark and threatening. He took a breath and plunged after her.